Yeah, close. Yep.
Rolled up.
Yep.
Yeah. And then maybe closer this one because you also get the voice from it. Em nghe rõ không Mai hả?
Dạ em nghe rõ. Dạ em nghe rõ.
Yes, I know. They could do another thing. So
What's up?
the thing là bật tiếp lên play cho thử đi. Inside in the peanut in the bottom you didn't see it.
Một chai dao tằm đấy không?
I see. Cold drink, which one you like?
Can't tell.
Có đáng không?
Mango one? Mango one?
That glass.
Yep.
This is tea. You want smoothie?
Sure.
Smoothie not the ice, yeah?
Sure.
Em cứ bảo là smoothie sinh tố xoài. Xin đó. Xin xoài. Có kiếm rồi. Yeah, that's it. Ready? Yes.
That's okay. No.
No. Okay, you want it, yeah?
Yeah, I can do that. Yep.
You want me to put somewhere?
No, that's good.
Over here. It could be back.
Fine. Fine.
Huh?
Fine.
But it's hard for you to check it out.
No, no problem.
No, sure.
Easy.
The remote control.
Well, my remote control.
We need cold. You need cooler, yeah? Nè, em chỉnh cái này chứ. Là nó phải định. Cho nên nó phải.
Okay, let's get going.
Give me 1 second.
Not yet.
Give me 1 second and she can start. Thank you. Goodbye.
Let's get going. So this is, we're going to do experiments. So it's another methodology. It's very well accepted by the top journals, yeah? So, and has been for quite a while. So again, yeah, we're going to tell you the state of the art. What are the up-to-date methods, but emphasizing what the editor's are looking for. and some really good examples of experiments being carried out and accepted in the top journals and where to from here. We're also going to do a hands-on, very exciting experiment here in the room. So these two people, Daniel Kahneman and Vernon Smith, got the Nobel Prize in economics in 2002, and essentially for experimental economics. Yeah, and after this, even though they'd been working in the field for 40 plus years, yeah, after this, experimental economics become mainstream. Yeah. So you're getting a lot of experimental research published in the FT50. Other experimental Nobel Prizes are Roth in 2012, Ostrom in 2009, and these three guys in 2019. So they all did experimental research. So what's the deal with experiments, right? Well, I've got to tell you, if you're a quantitative researcher that uses statistics and econometrics, right, you find an association between Y and X. The problem is you have to be able to convince the referee, the editor, and the reader that X is actually causing Y, right? Because it could be the other way around. Yeah, it could be that Y is causing X, right? And they refer to that as endogeneity. Yeah, endogeneity. So the good thing about experiments is that you can run it in a control setting, yeah, where you have one or more exogenous shocks, and you can see the effect on the outcome variable, right? So it's a way to get past the messy things you see in the real world, right? Because there's a lot of confounding factors. And in fact, medicine's been doing this for 100 years or more, where they do a control group. So they're testing a new drug. Yep.
Can I hide it?
Oh, yep. Yep. So they're testing a new drug, and so they have a treatment group that get the drug and a control group who get a placebo. It's not, the drug at all. It's just, a sugar tablet. But the participants in the trial don't know who's getting the treatment, who's in the treatment, who's in the control. And at the end of it, they can see whether the drug had any effect, right? So that's a control. And that randomized controlled trial is considered the gold standard in medical research. Now, in medical research, they've also traced people. There's a famous nurses study that traced like 10,000 people for like 40 years. And then they do empirical statistics and look at outcomes, right? Lifestyle factors, what they're doing, age, all that, and things that happen to them. But that doesn't work out. Most of the results found from those studies have been overturned by clinical trials because, again, you've got this endogeneity problem, right? So that can only be, really taken care of in a controlled setting. So the experiments, unlike, doing a study with statistics or econometrics, you're able to show causation. Yeah, and that's really important. Yeah, so it's an artificial setting, I know, and a laboratory, but it allows you to completely control the environment. Right now, the equivalent in empirical work, quantitative empirical work, is hard to find, right? But there are some examples, right? Germany was broken into East and West Germany, right, with different systems. So that's like an experiment, isn't it? There's that exogenous shock that's breaking it up. Another, natural experiment is Russia is socialist, the US is, democratic, right? So we've got like 50, 100 years of data on, which system works best, right? So there's some examples like that. Korea, there's North Korea, South Korea. So that's an exogenous shock that was divided into two parts. So we can look at, causation there. So, but it's, quite hard to get natural experiments in empirical work. But I'm going to tell you now that that's what the editors are looking for when you do empirical work, right? But, for sure, you could establish causality in the laboratory. So we've got a randomized trial here. Yeah, there's the whole universe of people on the far left-hand side. We're going to put some into a treatment group. Yeah, and so we're going to do an intervention about looking for work. We're going to give them some training on their CV and interviewing. And then the other people, we're not really going to do anything with them, right? And they're the control. And then we're going to look at, which group was more successful in finding work. That's the sort of thing you would do. Yeah. So that's an example of a control trial. So, yeah, here's what we're saying, right? If you can't go into the real world and make one country, socialist, another country democratic, you can take account, you can use whatever natural experiments there, but you're not going to be able to go and divide a country in two, north and south or east and west, right? So there are some natural experiments, but most things you have to do in the lab. So what's the difference? Well, the laboratory is, artificial, low realism, whereas the field experiment, when you go and get the actual data from outcomes, is high realism. But the laboratory has got very few extraneous variables. The field, lots of extraneous. You've got very high control in the lab and hardly any control in the field. Laboratory is pretty low cost, right? Whereas the field experiment's very costly. The laboratory you can get it done very quickly, but in the field, that's a very long time. And in the laboratory, people know that they're participating, but in the field experiment, they do not. So similar to all the research methods, you need to have a hypothesis. Otherwise, there's two things: that it is and what it is, right? And the really great scholars never read a paper that's all it's doing is telling you that it is, right? So they've observed an empirical fact, but that's meaningless unless you know what it is, So the really serious researchers want to see the theory first, what it is, and then you go test it, right? Is that what we say? So you've got to have your hypothesis, then you've got to select your sample. You've got to assign the subjects, one to treatment, one to control, manipulate the independent variable, right? And you measure the change in the outcome variable, and you need to have control over other factors that might affect the outcome. So how do you do sampling? You can do probability sampling, which is simple random or stratified random. You can do systematic cluster. You can do non-probability, which is, convenience. Some people do that, or snowball. We start off with some people. They give us, references to other. You can have a quota, so many, white males, so many white females, so many mixed race. And then it can be purpose or self-selection. So, you get like critical cases versus typical cases. So an example of why sampling is important: Dow Chemical come up with a new outboard motor, outboard boat motor, and they tested it extensively in Florida because Florida is very hot and muggy, right? And the outboard motor passed all the tests. So then they sold it nationwide. But in Michigan, where it gets extremely cold, the motors failed, right? The oil froze and the motors started to rust, right? So that's an example where they did selective sampling, but they should have done more extensive sampling. So how do you put people into the treatment and control? You can do completely random. Yeah, remember the students at Stanford? They were arbitrarily assigned to the roles of guards or prisoners. Yeah, or it could be a randomized block, or it could be a matched pair. So, for example, I want to see the effect of sleep on your basic skills. Yeah. So I can test your basic skills. Yeah. I can test that the next day. So the treatment group is going to get 2 hours per night. Yeah. One group's going to get 2 hours per night. Another group's going to get 10 hours per night. Yeah. So I could have 10 students in the 2 hours per night. Yeah, and 10 different students in the 10 hours per night. And then I look at their basic skills, including their reaction time, right? So, you know, but I want to make sure that the students are matched. So I have a matched sample. That can be important. So if I wanted to do, you know, okay, well, let's use the same students. One group has 3 hours and has 10 hours, right? But we've got to be very careful. We're using the same students, right? So that makes, you know, that gets rid of extraneous factors. But there could be an order effect, right? So if you had 3 hours, then 10 hours, you might get a very different outcome than if you went the other way, 10 hours first and then 3 hours. So that's something you've got to think about. So that's the order effect. What do you use? Random, you know, purposeful, blocked. Well, if it's hand preference, yeah, yeah, yeah. So if that's an independent variance, yeah. So then you know you've got to be careful that left-hand people in one and right-hand people in the other. Acquisition of skills over multiple periods of practice. Then you've got to use the same people. Experiment 1. Then they have another go in experiment 2, experiment 3, and so on. Block or stratified. Well, here we've got, we have to stratify because we have women and men, right? And then we do random assignments, group 1, 2, 3, and you've got different treatments and a control. And the men, you do random assignment, group 1, 2, 3, different treatments and a control. So the idea is you block what you can and randomize what you cannot, right? If you can't block, then you randomize. So we want to see the experimental treatment is giving feedback, giving feedback on the job, right? And we've got newcomers, you just hired. These are those teachers that have just 1 to 2 years of teaching. And then we have the current employees, the teachers that have taught for 20 plus years, right? And you give feedback to 12 new employees and 12 20-year plus, and you give no feedback to the control group, right? For the new people and the people that have been there for ages. And then you can compare the outcomes, right? So for the newcomers, does it make a difference whether they get feedback or not? For the 20-year plus, does it make a difference whether they get feedback or not? And then you could compare across newcomers and current employees. So we can do it instead of having the same students having 3 hours and then 10 hours. We want to avoid the order effect, right? Because they might get a different outcome than 10 hours and 3 hours. You could do a matched sample like they do in medicine. So we've got group A, which is 10 students, and then group B is a matched sample. So what will we match it on? I would think sex, age, their weight might be important, any medical, what their normal sleeping pattern is. So you can see there'd be a group of things you'd want to consider, right? So to take account of these extraneous factors. So you would match the group A, the group B students with the group B subjects with the group A subjects. And there's a way to do that. There's a way to actually, it's multidimensional, age, sex, health, weight, all those things. There's a way to actually summarize all those things in one measure called a propensity score. So you divide the participants in two groups, the treatment group, the control group, and then you introduce a change to the experimental group, right? And we often do that in finance, and it, of course, it's been used for a long while in psychology and in medicine. So in finance, experiments are used to understand how individuals behave, right, after manipulation. So if I go to here, this will give me a lot of experimental finance that's going on. So that should be in your online. So it's a database that's going through a lot of experiments that's conducted in the whole of finance. But you know, there'll be something like this for your individual area as well. See the latest papers and latest publications. So examples, a paper by Heaney and others. If you've got two traders, yeah, are they better than one? Yeah, and they had an experimental setting where there were 17 two-person teams and there were 20 individual traders. Yeah, and we're going to do something similar to this as our case study, yeah, later on, except I'm going to give you a huge sum of money, yeah, in US dollars, and ask you what issues in Vietnam would you try to resolve with this money, and how much money would you assign to each of them? So you'd have to figure out what the problems are and how you'd assign the money. So we'll have 5 people, yeah, 5 people who are doing it individually, and we'll have our 6 groups, yeah, and then we'll compare the individuals with the 5-person groups. So it'll be 5 people better than 1. So we can check that out. So yeah, and so so they had to figure out what the independent variable was, and that's sort of the information. Or the independent variable was 1-person or 2-person teams, and then the outcome variables were how much profit they made, right, as trading game. So you can have more than one independent variable. Yeah. So then you'll have interaction effects. So for example, a lot of people think that if children watch violent cartoons, they will act out and be violent. Yeah. And I can assure you that's not true. Right? That's not true, because I have 5 children and 6 grandchildren. So, and they all watch violent cartoons, but they don't act out. So what these researchers did, they had them watching violent cartoons and non-violent, but they also had what state of mind the child was in. Were they, acting up and being frustrated, or were they in a pleasant, happy state, right? And so that's easy to see with children, right? You can see when children have just had it, right? And so they're already very frustrated. So you're able to set up a 2x2, right? And you can see the individual effects, and you're able to see the interaction effects. Yeah. So the main effects are the effect of each factor, and you can see there's a big difference. 4.15 for watching violent cartoons and 2.71 for non-violent. Yeah. But then you're able to see the other effects, right? So frustrated versus not frustrated, it's a similar, even more pronounced. 4.44, that's very unlucky, by the way, if they're frustrated, and 2.43 if they're not. And then you're able to see the interaction, frustrated, violent versus not frustrated, non-violent. And non-violent, frustrated, not frustrated. You can get dizzy with all these interactions, yeah. But there's a lot of interactions there you can test, yeah. So you can have more than one independent variable that you're controlling. It just gets a little more complicated because there's a lot of interactions. Yeah. So you really do want to have control over extraneous variables in your experiment, right? So you've got to take into account, you know, details about the participants themselves and the situation they're in, some history effects, some prior testing, the 3 hours versus the 10 hours of sleep, experimenter effects. You can, you know, actually affect the outcome, right? Much like the common method. And, you know, the participants' interpretation of what's going on, because they will tend to give you what you want. So, and a placebo effect is, you know, just because I'm paying attention to you, you might do really good work, right? So just the fact that someone's taking an interest, right? So this is a very famous study. It's called the Hawthorne experiment. So just out of Chicago, there's a little town called Hawthorne, and Western Electric had a factory there. So they wanted to see the effects of, you know, changing the working condition, you know, lighting, airflow, things like that. They wanted to see what effects that had on productivity. So 2 groups. One group, they actually made things better lighting, yeah, and the other one, they did nothing. But they observed both, right? Guess what? Placebo effect. The fact that the experimenters were there observing meant that both groups had better output, right? The fact that, you know, after all this time, someone was actually taking an interest in them meant that they, you know, got better outcomes. So that's something you've got to take into account. It's not a neutral thing. So the fact that you're there observing can affect the result. Yeah, so the experimental factors had little. The desire to stand well with one's fellows, the same so-called human instinct of association, clearly outweighs the merely individual interest and logic, upon which so many spurious principles of management are based. Yeah? So having a dig of the whole management literature. So you do one experiment, right? So you get an outcome, right? But it's a good idea to replicate, yeah? Then you get a lot of different outcomes, and then you can calculate a standard error and do inference, right? So if I want to look at whether I pay a financial advisor by the hour or based on how much I earn, I'm gonna have to do an experiment, but then I'll do several experiments, right? So that I can do standard errors and conduct significance tests. So randomization, yeah, even in matched pairs, even when we match them, we know that the subjects aren't in the treatment and control aren't completely identical, right? So you could assign them in random order, but then you're still no guarantee they're going to be exactly the same. You know, and you know, again, responses measured in random order. So you want to protect yourself to extraneous factors. So internal validity is talking about was the experimental treatment the sole cause of the outcome variable changing? Sure. Did the manipulation, the exogenous shock, did it do what it was supposed to do? You can increase your internal validity through control groups, random assignment, and pre and post testing. You can test people prior to doing the experiment, and you can test them afterwards. External validity is about the generalization of your results. Yeah. So, you know, some people might say, well, you're just using students. That's not the same as using real, you know, people from the real world in business. Yeah. But in answer to that, you know, Vernon Smith would argue that students across the world where the research is done are a fairly homogeneous group. Yeah. So that makes for easy replication. And of course, students are smart. You know, you might not think so because a lot of people don't show interest in your class, but students are smart and they can understand abstract instructions and complex problems really quickly, whereas a worker might not. So that isolates one particular explanation for experimental results because you've got homogeneous, right? They're not going to be confused. Now, of course, if you can use non-students, that's fine. We have a researcher at Macquarie who uses real financial advisors. We've got a downtown campus. She's teaching for many decades into the Macquarie Applied Finance Program. They've got thousands of graduates in, even CEO positions all around the world. And they turn up to our CBD campus, get a lovely bottle of wine and do an experiment for her, right, for an hour. So recapping, independent trials, different participants could be used, yeah. And so group A, 10 students, two hours a night, group B, 10 different students, right? But, we can't be sure the characteristics are the same. Repeated trials, if we use the same participants, the order effects might kill us, right? 2 hours followed by 10 might give different results to 10 hours followed by 2. Match sample, it might be better use different students in the 10 hours versus the 2. It's sometimes though you can't be sure you're matching on everything, but this is what the medicos use, right? When did it start? A famous statistician called Bernoulli in 1738 was doing experiments. Chamberlain is another giant figure in the experimental world, and he published a paper in the Journal of Political Economy, which is one of the very, very top economics journals. And about markets. So experimental market that was imperfect. The prices weren't fully revealing. So Vernon Smith, the guy that got the Nobel Prize, with Kahneman, he actually did Chamberlain's course way back in 1948. So, Chamberlain obviously died by the time 2002 rolled around, so he didn't get a Nobel Prize, but his student Vernon Smith did. Okay, so issues. What issues you got to sort of address, right? Well, a couple of things are, they might say, well, you're using students and really they're not playing for sheep stations, right? The stakes aren't all that high. And so what can you learn from about the real world from these experiments? Well, Vernon Smith makes a very good argument that students are fine, right? Laboratory becomes a place where real people, the students, earn real money, the $50 an hour we pay them, for making real decisions about abstract claims that are just as real as a share of General Motors. Because if you think about it, when you buy a share of General Motors or any company, it's quite an abstract claim, isn't it? Yeah. It's far more, and that's a publication in American Economic Review. Getting $50 at the end of an hour or more if you win the trading game, the trading game is very real for the student. They're very motivated. In terms of, we'll come back to the low stakes, right? But again, students are homogeneous, they're smart, they can understand instructions and abstract claims. So, you've got to get replicability. But what about the low stakes, right? So $50 is different to getting, a payoff of hundreds of thousands in a real trading game. Because, it seems that way. But remember, it's only for a short period of time. So Cameron was doing experiments in both Australia and Indonesia. And at the time, the Australian dollar was very high. So it bought a lot of Indonesian money. So in fact, what they were paying was the size of a full month's pay, in Indonesia. And so when they looked at the results from the individual Indonesian participants and the Australian participants, there were no difference in the outcomes, right? So the size of the stakes didn't make any difference, whether it was paying 1 hour for the Australian subjects or 1 month for the Indonesian. Both groups were equally motivated. So that didn't make a difference. So that's a very good thing to address. If you are using students, then you can use that argument for the low stakes and you're only paying a little bit, and the students being this homogenous group. So some of these things we've talked about, and the anchoring is a huge one, right? You tend to go with the default option. Think of the people in the US getting, 2 to 4% on their retirement savings because they all went for the default, which was government bonds. Yeah? Think of the people in Australia getting 8 to 10%, yeah? Because they all went for the default, which was investing in the market. Yeah? And of course, the people in Australia have, sometimes it's 25% and sometimes it's minus 10. But on average, over a long period, they're getting 8 to 10%. And so the other thing is the order effects. You can see it would make a difference whether you had 2 hours sleep and I tested your response times, then you had 10 hours sleep and I tested your response, versus if you had 10 hours sleep, then I tested, then 2 hours. So that could have an effect, and they're called order effects. Now, again, in Australia, it's a must. You can't recover from this. If you do research involving humans and you don't have ethics, there's not normally most things you can, plead guilty and throw yourself at the mercy, but there's no provision for, apologizing and forget about this, right? I wish there was. Okay, so the Good Samaritan experiment, and this is Princeton, yeah? So the participants, and this is gonna make it even worse, were divinity students. Yeah? They were divinity students at Princeton. So they were told three different groups. They were told different things. One was told that they had to give a talk on being a good Samaritan. Yeah. Yeah. And so let's assume all 3 groups were told that. One was told they had to get there, they had to go from one building to another, and they had to get there quickly. Another group said, oh, well, go as soon as you can. And a third group was told to take your time. Yeah. So as they walked, there was a situation set up, the experiment, right, where someone collapses, looks like they're having a heart attack. Yeah. So for the groups, 3 groups in total, only half of the students who were going to give a speech on being a good Samaritan and who were divinity students, only half of them stopped. For the students that were told they had to give a speech on being a good Samaritan, but they told there was a sense of urgency to get there to give the speech, only 10% of them stopped. Now, you would like to think that you're a good person, right? Everyone wants to think we're a good person. But here they're put under pressure and they can see that someone needs their help. And they're going to give a talk about being a good Samaritan, and they are divinity students, and only 10% of them stop. So that's telling us we're learning some bad things about the human condition, aren't we? Right? And they don't stop. But of course, we will want to stop. Our best self would say we want to stop. That's far more important. Being a good Samaritan is far more important than giving the speech, right? So, obviously these people are going to need counseling, right? Doubly so because they're divinity students, and we're going to talk about being a good Samaritan. But of course, if you replicate this, you're not allowed to do it anymore by ethics rules, but if you replicate it, the same thing happens, right? So we learned that, 2/3 of us would give a killing blow, a killing voltage to a poor student. And that's not going to happen here. If you get your case study wrong, I'm not going to electrocute you. So you don't have to worry. You'll be perfectly safe today. No students will be harmed in the giving of this workshop. And we also learned that if you're assigned a role as prisoner or guard, that you will start acting out, right? So they're Yale, for the killing the student, Stanford for the prisoner guard, and now Princeton for just walking past someone that's obviously in distress, had a heart attack. So these participants wouldn't have felt very good about themselves, and we're not supposed to put people in that situation, right? So you would be denied. And so they're, that because of things that happen like that. That's why we've got to apply for ethics. For what we do, interviewing, executives, or, doing a survey or doing an experiment with executiveship, it's low risk. So you should get the ethics fairly quickly, ethics to pretty quickly. So a lot of experimental research appearing in the very top journals. So these are basically all FT50, Journal of Finance, Lucas in the laboratory. Lucas is the Nobel Prize winning economist, come up with a consumption model, call auction institutions to eliminate price bubbles. American Economic Review, right, which is a top journal. Management Science, as you all know, moral hazard and team production. Someone might shirk. And, here we go on health, separation of prescription and treatment and healthcare. Some of these I put in there because they're colleagues of mine, right? The last one's on an FT50. So where to from here? Well, this first one for the student is a great reference, right? So you might want to read that first. For the student, experimental economics. Anyone's an accountant or finance, this gives a review and classification of experimental economics research and accounting. This is very good, rules of thumb. So you want an experiment, run an experiment, what next? Okay, and so what to know about laboratory experimentation in economics. I run a national PhD course in research methodologies in July every year, and we do all of what we're doing today. We go through all that. It's intensive over 4 days, Monday to Thursday, 14th to 17th. If any of you wanted to do it, why am I signed out? I've been signed out, Duke, because I'm currently signed in on another device. I've been kicked out
Yes.
of my own Zoom.
Someone, it's okay. I love you guys.
I've been kicked out. I suspect you, Duke. I think you didn't like what I was saying.
Maybe Ruby.
Don't point the finger at Ruby. She would not give the killing 240 volts to a student. She did not. I'm sure of it.
Okay. I just want you to have a rest.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so it's.
Thank you. I'm very excited about the experiment you're going to do.
Oh, okay.
Because I know what I would list as the problems needing fixed. Yeah. And how much I'd allocate. Yeah. So, but there's no one answer. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
So you can be free to, use your imagination here. It's very interesting. We're given $10 billion US and you can fix what problems and issues there are in Vietnam. First, what are the issues and how much would you allocate to it? $10 billion US is a lot of money, isn't it? Is that a lot of money? I guess it doesn't. It's not anymore when people have $1 trillion like Musk, right? Elon.
Do we see the screen? I mean on Zoom? See? Okay. Yeah, you're back.
Go record again?
I think it's still on. Yeah? It's still on, yeah. It's just like,
Yeah, for sure. Recording?
yes, everything is on. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. So Peltovich, talking about laboratory experiments in economics, yeah, and the national PhD course. So I tell you, if you want to do it, just like Duke. No, I can sign you up. So it's via Zoom, 3 to 5, Monday through Thursday, 14th to 17th of July. So you get access to all the videos and readings and everything. So, and access to Dropbox. And a very nice book there by McCulloch, Experimental Economics with R. Using R to do because experiments are quantitative, right? Because you get the independent variables and the outcomes. So you can do statistics. Okay, I need my teaching assistant. and in your best writing, the Rockefeller Foundation,
You can clear.
yeah, you can clear that, yeah. Yeah, the Rockefeller Foundation has given you $10 billion US,
10 billion.
yeah, yes, to fix the problems and issues in Vietnam. $10 billion. I'll say it again, $10 billion US.
American dollar.
US dollar, yeah.
Dollar.
Not Australia, not Vietnam, not Vietnam.
Yeah, so it's about 15, yeah? 15 Australian dollar, 15 billion.
Oh, yeah, more, yeah, getting close to 17.5, yeah.
15.
Okay.
How much is down?
Oh, yeah, sorry,
10 years.
okay.
10
Okay,
years.
so the first thing is, what are the problems, issues in Vietnam? But what do you think? Yeah, number one, what are the problems, issues?
Yeah.
And what are the problems, issues? And two, how much would you allocate? How much of that money would you allocate to each problem? Each issue? Yeah, to each, each issue. And I'm gonna need your help to open this for me.
Yeah.
Take it away from me. Okay, so what the experiment is, I'm gonna have a treatment and control. I'm gonna have the groups, but I'm also going to have individuals. So Dong, Key, Ivy, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Lan, I should have remembered. Lan, my boat, my identity, tuna fishing. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You are going to do it individually. Don't look over each other's shoulders. You're coming up with the problems. No copying. I want this to be, hide the information. You're doing it individually. The others are in the same group they were in. Where's Nan? Is she here?
No.
She's playing hooky. Okay, the others in the same group. So you'll do it as a group. So we'll have, 4 groups or more, and the online people as another group. And we're going to have 4 individuals. So the treatment control, right? So 5 people or 4 or 5 people in the group better than 1 person by themselves, right? So that's what we're looking at. That's what the number of people involved is what we're looking at. Okay. It's a very interesting and informative thing to think about.
Just want to clarify the company HP as this money.
10 billion US dollars, yeah, to fix. Yeah, you got to come up with what the problems are. So number one, what do you think are the problems in Vietnam, right? And number 2, given that these are the problems, how much of this 10 billion US dollars would you assign to each of the problems?
In a category.
Anything. Tom, getting a cold drink or,
Sure.
or, making Canberra University, not just institute, yeah?
Okay, so we look at some
Yep.
people individually.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, because we have a big budget, we don't have many constraints.
10 billion US dollars, it's yours to decide. Yeah. What are some of your pet peeves? Yeah, is it the traffic? Is it climate change? What is it? The fact that the motorbikes and the cars don't stop for you when you're trying to cross. Instead of taking a minute, it takes 10 minutes to cross the road.
So, do you allocate work for the online one?
Yeah, same. I got the same. 2 was Put it through for them. No cheating, no looking over. Lan, turn your computer around a little bit. So
For this exercise,
this is an experiment.
experiment,
Yeah, are the five people groups better than the individuals?
group and individual,
Group versus individual.
group versus.
Yeah. Which gives the best result?
So the first step is identify the problems.
First, identify the problems and then decide how much of the 10 billion.
And that is like macro issues.
How much of the 10 billion you gotta put into each problem?
For two,
How much? How much of the 10 billion are you gonna, put into solving each problem?
how much or to like, you know, what, itemize the.
Yeah, how much, for example, we want to do something about education. So how much would we assign to setting up a Knowledge Bridge University?
Yeah, that's good idea.
Recommended answer is 500 million. So to give this experiment some internal validity, the four people are gonna have to send to Duke their answers before the group's reports, yeah? No, before the group's reports, otherwise they can fudge and say, we thought of that too, yeah. So they gotta send you their, what the things are they wanna spend the money on, so you get four different responses and how much for each. So they send it to you on Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever.
You can text me on yellow.
Dong, I think Key's looking over his shoulder at you.
Can send me your, they send me, yeah? And I can,
Soon, so they've got 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes.
then how do they do the group one?
Huh?
How do they do the group one? Individual or the group one, how,
These four are gonna send you the individual,
yes,
so then you'll have it. We'll do the group first, and then we'll see what the individuals come up with. So they'll send to you, you'll have it.
yes,
And then, once the groups have given their answers, you can say, tell us what their answers were.
yes. You send me, okay, send me on yellow then.
Hmm?
Yeah,
But they got 5 more minutes, they've still got some time. They don't have to send you now. Okay, everyone, 5 more minutes to get your reports ready. 5 more minutes, yeah.
I don't biết. Đây nè, có một buổi, bây giờ các bạn cần hỏi đi tìm một cái vấn đề vô vấn đề thứ vô thì nha cần phải xử lý và bây giờ sự từ vườn đến đó là cái gì đó chuyện cho nhận là rồi sau khi mà đó là nó cứ như vậy thì với 10 tỷ làm gì là sân bay để bạn đi cái đời của mình có thể có làm xe là ông người để tôi thì tôi chúng ta thì đó thì tôi là một nhà đó là người có thể là bạn sinh thằng big this better for you.
That's fine.
Yeah, so that can recognize.
That's good. That's good. Very diplomatic.
Yeah, it'll be snorting.
1 more minute, 1 more minute, to wrap up your reports. This is vitally important for the future of Vietnam. Vitally important. Do you have the reports from these guys? Okay, so 1 more minute to file your report on yellow. Answer both questions. What are the issues? And 2, how much would you assign to each one?
Thì cũng được. Được đấy. They said one more minute. 10 phút là 10 tốt.
Tell me when you have them. Done. Yeah.
Phải phải để những other tasks. Identify the issues of Vietnam that you have seen so far. When you got 10 million American dollars fixing. What are they? Okay. Another is, okay. You have 10 billion American dollars. Yes. Very rich. Okay. So, identify the problems. The problem we have, and how much we want to allocate. It can also use that. Okay.
So Shalini, we have 4 individuals doing it, but we have 5 groups doing it. So we can compare the individual versus group thinking. Yes. Okay, Duke, have you got the report? My God,
Too much money, a friend. Yeah, we got.
very good.
Maybe another.
I'm just gonna wait until these guys file the report and then I need my teaching assistant, of course.
Không lọc đâu. Yeah, good on that. All right, Mr. Tung already gave it. Let's.
Well done, Don. Good work.
Ủa, ở đó là gì vậy? Don hả? Yeah. No, anh gọi gì vậy? Gửi cái đó. Dạ, là cái gì?
Next week I get my car. We can talk.
Yeah.
Lan, you done yours? Well done. Key, what's going on? Ivy, what's going on? Tell Nan, I noticed she wasn't here.
Đâu thấy đâu. Chưa, chắc là gửi cho Mary ạ. Ok, yeah, wow.
Now, everyone, has Key done his?
Ký. Wow,
Got them all?
yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
where's my teaching assistant?
Oh, yeah, teaching assistant.
Okay, where's group number 1?
Yeah, here.
Of these guys, individuals. So they'll come on.
Individual,
Yeah,
okay.
you'll read out what they did later.
All right.
Okay, so which group? No, you later, you come later, individuals come later, so we want the groups first. Yeah, up the back, let's start the back, up the back. No, not Adam, but this group here, the top left-hand corner, yeah. Not Adam, sees no problems in Vietnam, so the question is not applicable to him. Okay, so group 1, yeah, please tell us, what are the issues that you see in Vietnam? Yep.
Even your people.
Oh,
Nói đi em đi.
here.
Oh, let me.
No, you're here.
Yeah, sure.
You're here working with me. That's got it. Let's go on.
Basically, after six
6.
like crucial issues that
Yep.
we need to pay attention right now. So the first one is like, you know, that we're having like SDG at the moment from the United Nations. So I think that the first one will be environmental degradation and climate change issue.
Just environment, level 2. Yep,
Environmental issues.
number 1.
Because like, you know, in Mekong Delta, the sea level rise of salt water intrusion, over the pollution, even deforestation. And I'm gonna spend like about 2.5 million for that, to have like the plane, plane.
Wow, a lot of money, 2.5 billion, 25% of the money goes to that, okay?
Yes, so it's for
Yep.
more sustainable
Okay.
future for future generation.
Yep.
So maybe the solar panel or clean
Yep.
up campaign.
Yep, got it.
So the second on the list will be educational system modernization.
Education, yeah,
The problem is that in Vietnam, the soft skills training is not adequate to the amount, and especially the digital skill. So it's not equal to the industrialization demands. So that's why I will invest on some free service for the rural area, and as well as the training for all the teachers and staff, and finally, increase and boost the students' center method as well as critical thinking. And I'm gonna spend 1.8 billion.
1.8. Okay,
So the third one will be the healthcare system. So the ability to access to the healthcare for the rural area is really low now. So I think that we should invest on mobile health checkup and like telemedicine consultant, for example, online consultant from the doctors from the urban area. And I think that we should pay like 1.5 billion.
excellent,
The first
excellent.
one is the infrastructure, because you know that in Vietnam, there are some areas that are built based on the vertical. However, there are some on the horizontal, and there's some issues like the flooding, or maybe the traffic congestion, or maybe like the public transportation. We have it, but we don't have it enough to serve all the citizens. So I think that I'm gonna spend like 2 billion
Okay.
to renovate all bridges and roads, and use maybe invest in the digital to make it like smart or sensor traffic lights, things like that.
Yep,
The third one is like economic and labor market reform. So you know that over here, the term worker sustainability and worker sustainable is not common term in Vietnam. So when we mention the worker sustainability, we have to pay attention to their critical and their working environment and condition. So another issue is that there are many informal employments at the moment. So they don't get paid for their healthcare from the government or from the official companies. So I think we're going to spend 1.2 billion. Last but not least, I think that we're gonna spend the rest of the money to the gender equality
gender
issue.
equality, yep, gender equality.
Because in Vietnam, it's more and more common, but none of us pays attention to that. And equal like the law and the rules and regulation from the government. So for example, the violence in the family and some traditional gender roles right now are not equally valued, as well as the gender responsive education and employment policies are not will get enough attention. And finally, I want to say that low budget doesn't mean that low impact, because maybe that issue needs low budget because the campaign is simple, like pay attention to the awareness or the conscious of the citizen. So that's the last thing that I want to share. It doesn't mean you pay less and it impact less.
6 plus 2 is 8 plus 2. We think that's 2 billion, yes, gender equality, 2 billion?
Yes,
2
to,
billion.
because like in Vietnam, that's like completely zero playing right now.
Okay, got it. Okay, I think your group is next.
Yeah.
Are you the spokesperson?
Yes.
Okay, so you do it.
Yeah, sure, because thank you for your presentation. Yes. So let me,
Oh,
yeah, because we have the same idea in the three.
Okay, give them a tick, give them a tick,
We have three big here.
two, and how much?
Yeah, we spend like 50%.
Yep.
And
That's a very expensive, 50%.
yeah, it is also more than have to pay.
30%.
It is 20% for education.
Education.
Yeah, explain for the education and healthcare, we aim to increase the quality of the facility and also increase the welfare for the staff in this sector. And for infrastructure, we focus on the
Yeah,
transportation.
infrastructure is very expensive,
Yeah,
yeah.
between the region. Yeah,
Okay,
that's it.
wonderful. And now, are there any more groups?
Yes.
Sure, I got one more group, yep.
Yes.
So anything's the same? If some of the things are the same, just tell us and we'll do that.
No, just the voice for the MC.
Yeah, so for our group, we also spend monthly on the first one is environmental pollution, climate change.
Yeah, how much?
We spend about 35%, $2.5 billion on clean, on
Two
clean,
point five, 3.5.
2.5 billion. And we spend on the clean energy project, waste and water management, reforestation,
Yep.
and also green education to raise the public awareness on the environmental issue.
No, not expensive, okay.
The second thing we spend is on education quality and inequalities. 25%, which means, no, sorry, 20%, which means 2 billion.
Okay,
Yeah, we spend money on teacher training, salaries, digital education, scholarship, and support drawing.
yeah,
And thirdly, we spend 20% of $2 billion on healthcare system.
2 billion,
To be more specific, we would like to have the modernization of public hospital, the healthcare access in rural and remote area, the health insurance, and disease prevention campaign. And next, we're going to spend about 20% on private connection and infrastructure.
2 billion,
Private connection and infrastructure. And we're going to spend money on urban public transportation and road and bridge upgrade in rural areas.
that should have 3 ticks on
My
that.
last thing is about the bureaucracy and administrative reform. We would like to digitalize the government services and simplification of procedure. We spend about 15%, between 1.5 billion.
Economic reform, yeah.
It takes a long time. That is the idea of Adam. It has taken you about 4 months, right? You have to be the big barn, very quickly.
Okay.
It takes too long. So to solve it, I think we have a better administration process and to digitalize.
Yep, any more?
Yeah, that's all.
That, okay,
Yes. Only 10.
6, 4, 10, yeah, excellent, excellent.
Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Any more groups? Okay, Duke.
Yes.
Visuals up.
Okay, sure. Oh, all right. Give me a second. Get my phone
Okay,
and then read out. So I read out the individual, yeah?
that's not a new thing.
All
for you.
right. Now let us see from Ivy. All right. So Ivy spent 2 billion for education and training,
Education.
1.5 for public health and community.
Slow down.
Oh, sorry.
2.5.
What else?
Edu and training, public health and community care, 1.5.
Yeah, just slow down, 1.5, yeah. Yeah,
Environment and climate action,
all right,
environment. 1.2,
1.2. 1.2, no. We
dig-
only like to deal in whole numbers.
digital infrastructure,
Just look at that.
1.
One better.
Yeah. This one interesting. Cultural heritage
Oh, yeah, very
and
important.
indigenous value. So just cultural heritage, 0.8.
Just cultural, yeah, 0.8, yeah.
Cultural heritage and indigenous values. Gender equality, woman empowerment,
How much?
0.5. Sorry, 0.5.
0.5, okay.
Number 9, youth innovation,
You.
youth, 0.8. I think you need another screen.
No, it's okay, it's okay.
And then emergency response.
Okay,
Oh, no, youth is 0.8, yeah? And emergency response, 0.5.
just put emergency.
Or maybe get put on the top.
That it?
Yeah, no, that is only one person.
Yeah, yeah,
We have.
Yeah,
that's it
I
for that.
got 3%.
That's all right, now tell them, yeah, we can get rid of this. Yeah, it's all good.
Can we take here? Individual.
Next one, it's okay, next one now. Girl, now do boy.
Right, so
You got,
she spent 6.5 billion. 6.5 billion on environment.
environment, Bob.
That's it. Oh, no. And, yeah. Do you want the breakdown or no?
No, that's
No.
fine. And what's the next one?
And 3.5 on food safety.
On what? Food.
Food safety,
Okay, great. So these are basic
3.5.
environment and food, yeah? Shelter and food, yeah?
All right, 3.5.
Okay. Next one.
All right, give me a second.
Now lands.
We have.
3.5. That's it. Yeah. Say already. All right, land.
The last one, how many SU that we have?
That's all right.
Another 2.
That's all right.
Another two is
Okay, all right. Maybe you don't need to put bill, you just go, okay, B. All right, education, 3. Don't, is fine.
Three, yeah.
Public health,
Health, yeah,
2.
yeah.
Legal system,
I think it's
2.
Yes.
2, legal.
Yeah.
Legal system, 2.
Two,
Legal.
yeah. That's fine. Fine.
All right, infrastructure, 1.
Okay. Still more
Public security, 1.
security, but security.
Security.
Still more.
And let's see, what is development? Sustainable development, 1. Sustainable
Environment.
Environment. Can you put here?
Yeah.
environment.
We have one more to go.
Yeah. So it's Mr. Tung.
Okay, last one, please.
Okay, education,
Yeah.
2.5.
How much?
2.5. Healthcare, 2.
Healthcare, two, yeah.
Environment, 1.8. Yeah, what housing, 1.5.
Yeah, housing, yeah, that's good.
1, 3.
Five.
1.5. AI adoption,
Like technology.
1.
Okay.
1.
Yeah. Anti-corruption,
Yeah.
anti-corruption, 0.7.
Zero
What's
point
0.7.
not.
Gender equality.
Gender. Oh, very good.
Yeah. 0.5.
Just wait a minute. Gender not.
0.5. And that's it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's all.
So what we noticed is that the groups got a lot of overlap, right? And so did the individuals, but the individuals had a very wide variance, like the groups were like shooting with a rifle, like sharpshooters, but the individuals had a shotgun and the pellets were going everywhere, right? So that's what we noticed. So the group think really focused in, right? Now, I want to focus in on your education expenditure. How much of that is going towards setting up Knowledge Bridge University? Because the right answer is that like 500 million is going to set up Knowledge Bridge University with Duke as the president. Yeah, so that's what we should hear here for education. Of that 3 billion, 500 million should be set up for setting up Knowledge Bridge University. So Duke can spread the research to the whole country. Excellent. Let us take a break. When we come back, we're going to do some very interesting stuff about capital market studies, and you're going to find the editors are getting very, very demanding, but they're very specific about what they want. So you'll learn a lot from doing that. And then, so come back at 3:30, and then we'll do what the editors are looking for in capital market studies. And then we'll finish with what the editors are looking for in general across all of the methodology. Okay, so good job on that experiment.